Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Stacy. It's such a pleasure being here today.
Yeah, I'm super excited to chat. My community loves PR. They think they need it. And maybe you're going to tell us they do, they don't, all the things. So I'm excited to really dive in. But before I ask you some questions, I would love to hear, how did you get started in PR? What is your background?
Oh, it's a really funny story. And it kind of dates me just a bit. But I went to school in Chicago. I went to theater school, and it was at DePaul University. And I remember walking into, well, first of all, I was completely obsessed with Bewitched. Do you remember that show, Bewitched? Yep. Okay. So I was obsessed with the husband. He was at an ad agency. So when I was working my way through theater school, I went to the top office in the building, and they had this huge 3-ring binder with all these jobs you could do to work yourself through school. And I chose a PR firm. And this woman worked at home. This was in 1989, 1990. So not too many people were working at home then. And she was a former WGN producer. And I was her right hand. I was doing all of her cover letters, on a typewriter, and then I would fax it all. So that's how I learned PR. I learned it like just old school, working myself through college, being the right hand of a publicist from the 90s.
Oh, wow. And then how did your journey evolve?
Well, after I got into publishing, was basically Dr. Seuss through my 20s. I wrote award-winning curriculum. And then I went on, because I launched a TV network for the National Head Start Association. I decided to get my master's degree in human development, because I was going to go on to my PhD. And then what happened is something called student debt. I don't know if you know what student debt is, but it can be crippling.
Yes.
So I was like, oh, these bills are coming due after I got my master's degree. And I was like, why don't I just start my own company? So I started my PR firm, Wasabi Publicity, with my business partner I knew from a personal development seminar I was doing, Drew Gerber, and the rest is history. And it just took off like from day one. People wanted PR.
Yeah. So why, first of all, I'm assuming you know your client well. Why do people want PR so badly? Like it's one of the things they just like believe they need, and they need it fast.
Yeah, for sure. I think that most people want to expand their business from like a one-on-one phenomena to a one-to-many phenomena. So, but for local businesses, they might want to expand to a region, or for a regional or state business, they might want to go national. For national companies, they want to go international. So I think that the scope of business is what's important for people, and they just want to expand. And you know what they always say, if you're not scaling, you're failing. So essentially for business owners, that's really the thing, is like how to like hold on to that growth as you go and to attract new customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And with PR, can you just explain the difference between PR and marketing, and just the difference between the two?
Yeah, let's keep it really simple, because I think people get it really confused and overwhelming. Yeah. Let's just talk about it in terms of earned, paid, and owned. So paid media, you pay for it. So you have complete control over it. You're paying money for it, and you're paying money to, we used to call it like, airtime or ink time, right? It's like broadcast, or it's like going into some type of print format. You're paying for that, and you should control the message. Owned media, these are all the things you own: social media, your website, your business card, your book, your products, whatever you sell. These are things that you own and you have complete control over. That's those two. Then there's earned editorial media. That's what PR is. And it's the art of getting you mentioned in somebody else's paid and owned assets. And there's an old saying that people would always say is, you pay for advertising, you pray for PR.
Oh, I love it. Well, and here's the thing. I think there's a level of credibility when somebody else says you're amazing, or your business is big, or like one of the top, or you should, anything like that. When we say it, when we go on our own social media and tell everybody why we're so amazing, it just feels like marketing, like sales, right? But when somebody else says it, it's like your ears, everything like perks up. You want to hear, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that it's human nature. And this is where my master's degree in human development comes in. We want to belong, and we want to make a difference. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the base level survival. And then when you start to have all the survival needs met, food, water, shelter, then you start to like think about your legacy and the difference that you're making for other people. And at the end of the day, people want to belong and they want to work with winners. So if you're just a self-proclaimed winner, people go, but if you're a winner that everybody's talking about, especially the press, that must be something, and that's just human nature to want to be with people who are succeeding.
Yeah,
it makes us feel good.
So how do we go about getting earned media?
Well, it depends on who you are, right? So let's just take, for example, you tell me, Stacy, what's a for example you want me to give you? Let's
just say this is like a local business owner who has like, I'm trying to think. They have a landscaping business.
Great. Okay, landscaping business. Okay. So, and then we're trying to reach people with land to save, right? Okay. So first of all, I always ask the client, well, what do you want? Right. So do you want just something in the local paper? Do you want radio? Do you want podcasts? Do you want TV? Like there's so many different things. Here's what I would say to a landscaping company. TV, right? Well, what about TV? Well, you could pay a TV program to do a short demo, they air that.
Yeah.
What about if you called the local TV station, ask for their assignment desk and say, you know what? It's spring, it's about to go summer and the grass is growing and weeds are growing. And how do I get all this poison ivy and all these weeds? How do I manage it in 3 easy steps? Would that be a segment that you would like to do, local TV producer? And they're going to say yes, because everybody's dealing with that right now. In fact, I am too. Can you come on and we're going to come out to your, do you have a client that we can actually just do a segment with? So if they've got a slow news day and they don't have breaking news that displaces you, boom, they're going to have a segment called, here are 3 ways that you can deal with this unmanageable lawn, or something to that effect.
Yeah. Okay. So good. So I love that your first step was like, well, which area, which medium, there's so many different outlets. So this kind of has like another question. Sometimes you might go on TV just to kind of get like the credibility of I've been on CBS, right? Versus your clients are actually, potential clients are watching. So can you talk about the difference between picking a platform that your clients are actually watching versus not watching? And why would you ever pick something your clients aren't watching?
Yeah. Okay. So for businesses that have to do proposals and they have to establish credibility before they're actually hired, consultants, things of that nature, then you're going to really want like the as seen on CBS or ABC or NBC and so forth, or mentioned in the, local daily newspaper de jour or some national magazine or something like that. But if you've got something like the landscaping example, and you want to reach direct to that person that might hire you tomorrow, plus, they had really great tips for the lawn management. That really made a difference for me. I just don't really have time to do it myself. Can I hire them? That type of thing. Then you want to think about, well, where are they reading or where are they watching?
Yeah.
So the difference really is in who's going to buy. So I always like to look at the end and then work backwards. So what kind of result do you actually want? And then let's work backwards and think about it in terms of just conversations. You're just stimulating conversations with public relations. So who do you want to be having a conversation about you that makes the biggest difference in the audiences that you serve? Make sense?
Yeah, so good.
Okay.
And I think it's just good that we bring that up because a lot of times people think I need to get on these places. And then when I do, the phone is going to be ringing off the hook or right. And sometimes, no, it's not me getting on local TV that gets me customers. But when I put that local TV as seen on my Instagram,
right,
somebody that's following me on Instagram is like, oh, wow. Okay, wait, she's doing a lot of other stuff here. So I want people to really see what they potentially could get, couldn't get, but how there's like the aftermath of that credibility.
Yeah, leveraging, right?
Yes,
So,
yes. Great word.
So in 2011, I put a client on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Now, this was pre-Instagram,
Okay.
right? So you couldn't really like even snap it and then share it. This was the choice head of the kiosk as you're walking down the street in New York or LA or Atlanta or whatever, right? And so it was so funny, right? To the client said to me that I said, "Oh, we got you on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Everybody who's walking by a kiosk is going to see how to fight and stay friends, right?" And it was a personal development company, Landmark. And I remember the president of the corporation. He goes, "Oh, that's great, but what about the Today Show?"
Nice.
So also it's not only what's going to get you business, but also what you feel is successful for yourself. Because sometimes the clients are like, "Well, I just really want to be in this magazine." One time a guy said, "My mom loves to read that magazine," right? And so I just want to show my mom
That's so funny.
that people here think I'm a big deal, right? But back to like real actual client, like moving the clientele forward, I think it's important that if you leverage it on social media, and I'm using that example of the Wall Street Journal now, and this is decades later, right?
Right. Yeah.
And but it does have everybody then going, "Wow, she got somebody on the Wall Street Journal on the front page. How did she do that?" Right? It's just relationship pitching with the columnist there. But that's how you then leverage it later. You're leveraging it in conversations or proposals. A local restaurant, and you've all seen this when you walk into a local restaurant and they have on the walls what the local newspapers or the awards that they've won from the local press. And then all of a sudden you're coming out of the bathroom washing your hands, you're going, "Oh, look at all these accolades from the local press. They must be really good. Oh, I'm going to have a really nice dinner here." Like that's the kind of, it's just a credential builder, a solidifier so that people trust you.
Yeah. Well, and it really is. And I think it's one of those things where first impressions are everything. So it could be you don't see things like that and you decide this is not a great place. But when you see all of the awards and the articles and it's all of a sudden like, "Oh, this is a good place." And sometimes it's not a good place, but it's literally your perception is, no, it is. So you believe and you buy into it, which is funny, like how our brains work. But
yeah,
I love what you talked.
It's back to human development, right? We always want to be with winners.
Yes.
Who we are. It makes us feel safe as an organism, on the planet. Like, I got to sidle up to somebody who's going to get dinner,
Yeah. Well, and I always tell people that like people want to work with the winning companies, whether it's clients or it's even your employees, your team members. People want to identify as working for an amazing place that is being talked about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So PR is not just for potential clients. It's also for potential people that want to work in at this place. So I think it's absolutely huge. Another thing that you brought up was the leveraging things that have happened in the past. So I have seen people think, "Well, how would I talk about that? That's happened so long ago." And I was told like a long time ago that really good PR people figure out a way to talk about that one thing a gazillion times. Can we just talk about that for a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, let's just see if I can't put my fingers on something else. So usually in my client meetings, like a new client meeting, they may or may not know a lot about me personally as a chief creative officer of Wasabi Publicity, right? But then when I'm in the meeting, like we're doing media training or something like that, I go, "Well, I was featured in More Magazine as an international publicist. Here is the picture that their team created about me, and you can see this article about me here, right? Oh, I'm just going to send this to you, client, so that you can actually see it," which is also attached to my social media because, curious minds want to know, right? And even though this is dated, right? I'm 53. This is when Michelle Tennant, 42, right? So you can see how much leverage I've been getting out of this placement, right? You also see on my social media assets, I mean, to have a feature with I'm a kayaker, right? So I'm a business professional and I'm a kayaker. And this was in an article that was about, it was on the cover, right? Jobs it was how to have a life and a job in a stink bomb economy, right?
Yeah.
So it's about the stories.
Okay.
So it's like, if you think about, leveraging press, leveraging, what stories do you need to leverage that both entertain and educate other people,
Mm,
especially your clients, to bring them closer to you?
yeah.
So, I tell that story not as a braggart with my clients, but as a way to media train them how to then clip their own media placements.
Mm,
Right. So I'm
okay.
just having a conversation like, you got to make sure that you clip these and make sure that you have a designer, reformat them so that they look good on your social media assets.
Yeah.
And then they go, oh, right. So I'm just having a conversation about technique and how to leverage things. But back in the back of their mind, they're like, she was in More magazine, like a national
Mm,
glossy magazine. And that value of that national glossy magazine, to have a full page ad in that magazine, is going to be $500,000,
mhm.
right? Just one ad. So they
Yeah.
start to kind of run that through, and then they go, wow, that's credible. But
Mhm.
meanwhile, they don't forget, oh, I gotta clip this. This was in the
Yeah.
newspaper. It's not a podcast. It's going to be on the internet forever. I need to really get busy and get this posted on my social media so I have access to it
Yeah.
forever.
So what do you tell somebody? Because I love everything you're saying, but what do you tell somebody? Like one of
Mhm.
my clients, I could picture saying, but Stacy, like that happened so long ago. I just feel silly bringing it back up. Like, how do you get your clients out of that thinking of like, no, 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 it's still part of your credibility?
Well, let's just think about, I was listening to a seminar last Saturday by a agent who was like looking for authors, right? And because I've got a memoir that I'm trying to get agented right now. And I was like, well, and I have stuff in my past that I just forget about, and who cares? He
Mhm.
said, he goes, you need to put those, if it's a credential. So if you think about like what you're trying to accomplish, that goes
Okay.
to, we got to look at the end in mind and then work backwards. And if one of those credential pieces from your past, or one of those placements from your past, moves forward the project or the goal, it's relevant. And I started to think about that when he said that about what he wants in his query letters. I thought, gosh, that's important. Right. So I'll
Yeah.
have clients all the time. They're like, well, I don't think that that's important that I crochet. Well, it's important to the editor of the crochet magazine.
Mhm.
Right. And so, and then, well, I'm a business consultant. Why do I want to be in the crochet magazine? I said, because people love to learn about people. And if you're covered in crochet magazine, that's really the similar thing to being on the resume. What do we always read on the resume? All of us, we go right down to the hobbies. Because what am
Mhm.
I going to talk about with this person when I'm interviewing them? Go right down to the hobbies, crocheting. Now I've got a conversation starter. Same thing happens in any type of relationship development when you're thinking about that one-to-one phenomena with client development, or the one-to-many. When you
Mhm.
start to talk about your hobbies and they start to see you not only as an entrepreneur and a business
Mhm.
person, but as a human, people relate to you and they want to know more about you. Then you
Yeah.
naturally build your tribe.
Yeah. And I love this. I think some of us are like, but I don't want people to relate to me, or I don't want to put my personal stuff out there. But people want to do business with more than just a company. So
Yeah.
I do think there's a way to still have your personal life and still be private, but share those pieces about you.
100%. You do not have to put your children front and center.
Yeah.
I always tell that to clients because they'll say, oh, just talk about my son. Well, did you have a conversation with your son? No. I was like, well, you should probably have a conversation with your son tonight and then let me know. And sure enough, 50% of the time, the son is like, no, I don't want to be anywhere near that story. So
Mhm.
we look at like the story. Look, when we're sitting around a campfire as people and just enjoying each other's company,
Yeah.
what comes up? We just tell stories to each other. And that's
Mhm.
all that people really want to hear. There's I did have one client, Stacy. This is hilarious. I was just thinking when you were talking. He grew up across the street from Disney, California Disney,
Okay.
and his father was a hotel manager. And then he grew up to manage like large hotel chains. And then he ended up representing a international nonprofit that saved large sibling groups that were orphaned. And I said, oh, that's a really great trajectory of a storyline from there you were living, home while people are on vacation, to then homes while you're traveling for business. And then you're like homes for orphan. He goes, you're crazy. He goes, the way your brain works, you're just nuts, right? I remember we were having dinner in DC, and I said, no, it's going to be a really good story. You just mark my words. 2 years later, a New York Times columnist picked up, like, loved that storyline and featured it, right? Because it's just an interesting story. Like, it's for no other reason other than it's an interesting read. And he was like, he called me back, and we're still friends to this day. And he's like, you were right. And we love to hear you're right, by the way.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, we don't necessarily think in stories. So for you, it's something that is coming naturally to you. How can your typical business owner start understanding, like looking at this as storytelling?
Yeah. So let's just, I remember I was telling my hairstylist one time about this, because she was trying to figure out like how to get more clients locally. And I said, you got to first think about what you're educating people on. Like, what is something that you say every single day to your clients? If they're coming into a store, what is the average story or conversation that you're having with that client? And she goes, oh, well, I'm usually talking about how to take care of hair when it's treated with color or something like that, or how often you need to get your hair cut and things of that nature. I was like, great, that's your story, right? So then you go to the local press and you just give them the same, but yours just has a moral to the story, is your tips, your takeaways, the things that people can't forget.
So good. Like, it's already happening. We're just not catching it. What if we actually started looking for those?
That's right.
So good. Where would people get started? Like we had said first, like pick your platform or pick your medium. How are you pitching? How are you reaching out? Like, what would you tell people to do?
Well, and then I don't know, Stacy, we've got a workbook that I can just give all your people for free. Would that be
amazing?
To you? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that'd be great.
This is I'll give you a link, a bit.ly link to this. And this is a 21-day PR action guide. It's a workbook.
Okay.
And, I've got basically formulas on, and then so it's broken into 21 days. And this is whether you read the book or not, here's the formula, right? So the first week, or the basic thing, is write your media materials. So pretend you're a reporter writing on yourself, like a press release, basically, right? Then the second week is really pitching the press. You got to identify, well, who do you want to really cover you? And then the third one is really like shining in those interviews and making the person who's interviewing you, helping them and making them look good. It's just a relationship, right? So here's another fun story about my local coffee guy. So he was sweet thing. He had like a coffee in a caboose, an old train caboose. And I live in this Great Smoky Mountains. So he was always frustrated because he kept getting placed in with the local paper's advertising department. And I said, don't talk to the advertising department, talk to the editor. You've got you're doing a business out of a caboose.
Right.
In a historic train, like where he was at the top of where old conductors, like at the turn of the century, it was like they were a hardcore train conductor if they made that peak. It was like the peak of the mountains, right? And I said, invite them to come over. So then he had this, he would just ignore me every day. He'd be like, shoe fly, quit with your coaching, right? Shoe fly. Well, he started to have a teenager, a local high school kid, do a mural of the train. And I would get in, I'd come every day, do my coffee. I'm like, Frank, did you call the local paper? No. I said, come on, promise me that you're going to do it today. Because you've got this high school kid doing this beautiful mural of a train, right? So he finally did. He was on the front page of the local paper. Wow. Why? Exactly like I told him, it was history in the making. So you had a location, a geographic location that was historically significant to the area, a business who was brand new, doing a mural with a kid. Come on. It's like all the elements of like the feels, right? The feel good stories. Like everybody's reading it going, oh, let's go have coffee over at the depot, So it was he was really shocked at like how his business grew after that.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, and here's the thing, there were a lot of elements there that definitely landed the first page, right? Now, somebody that's listening, that's thinking, I don't have those elements. How do you spin a story out of something that they feel like there's no story here?
Ask a kid.
Oh, okay.
So here's the fun thing about adults and kids. Kids do not lie. Adults lie.
Okay.
So if you have a conversation with a fifth grader in your life and just literally ask them, what do you think is interesting about my store? Or what do you think is interesting about me? They will tell you.
That's really interesting and true. Very true.
Right. And the other thing is that when you're practicing to be on an interview, give them a fake microphone, turn on your smartphone, just turn it on, and then turn on the video and watch the interview, and then say, hey, will you play, just play Oprah with me for a little bit and ask me questions, and then play back the interview and watch yourself. You're going to see that you've got bad habits with your hands, that you're saying the word, that you can't believe that you wore that you've got your hair is a mess, whatever. You're going to see, like I just did, see, right? Yeah. So those kinds of things you're going to see inside that conversation. More importantly, you're going to love these looks from these fifth graders where they go, I don't even know what you just said. And that means that you're speaking in your industry jargon, and it's not really communicating to a mass populace. And you need to really alter what you're saying so that a kid can understand it.
Yeah, so good. And I love just asking somebody else. I think we can be so hard on ourselves.
Yes.
So everybody listening is like, there's nothing amazing. I don't have this unique story. But even just asking a friend or your spouse or your parent,
posting it online,
anything, even asking your customers, why do you come here? Tell us what you love about this place, right? I think just getting that outside input could really help you figure out what is a story here that I didn't even realize.
Yeah, and people do surveys, right? So if it's uncomfortable for you to address clients as they're coming in to a retail business or something like that, then maybe you could survey them and then ask them to take the survey either through your newsletter or through like a little card that you're placing by the register or something like that. And then people will really give you feedback. If you give them the opportunity to communicate with you before they go online and communicate, on Yelp or something like that, I think it's important for you to have that conversation with clients that they understand what they love or loathe about your services.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Okay. I want to ask you, Michelle, how important is social media to journalists? What should we be thinking about?
Sure. So I would say, 2 decades ago, not so important. A decade ago, starting to get important. Today, post-pandemic, it's everything.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. I want the honesty. So fill us in. What are they looking at? What do we need to be thinking about?
Yeah. So if your social media, if you want to do national press or international press, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to look for your credentials. So the credentials today include your social media following. So one of the things I just got off a client call before our interview, Stacy, and that client has 3 million on his social media following. He's got a doctorate. He's got, complete business acumen and has the clientele list to prove it. Those are the kinds of things that are a trifecta for a press person. They want all that today. Now, if you just have one or the other, let's say I always hear I've got, I've got real life experience. I don't have the PhDs or I don't have the master's degrees. Well, there's still press that you can get, right? Yeah. Like the TV example with the landscaper, right? That they still want you for segments on how to take care of your lawn because everybody's taking care of their lawns. There's also, different types of, I call all reporters print or broadcast, right? And so print is everybody from magazines to journalists and whatnot. And then broadcast is all of it, TV, podcasters, radios. So if we just look at print and broadcast, print people want the scoop. Tell me something I don't know, or I don't like to, I want to be the first one to report on this, right? That's them. And then the other people just want to show, right? They just don't want people to turn the channel.
Yeah.
So entertain me, give me the show. So if we think about it in terms of you've got the scoop or you've got the show, you're in.
Okay.
So if you're really worried about the level of social media reach that you have, and you're just starting out, then just go on the podcast with the lady at the gym. Or maybe
Okay.
there's a guy at church who's got a podcast, or your neighbor says, hey, I'm about to do a podcast on something new. Just get your feet wet with some of those more friendly and local press people. In no show, no magazine is too small when you're just starting out to really learn the ropes and get that done. And then surely you can actually then expand your reach and hire somebody if you want to really get like a bigger fan following base. Find a social media expert to grow that for you.
Yeah. I don't think it's one of those things where just because you don't have it doesn't mean stuff still can happen. I do agree with you. Like, yes, I think they want it, but I also think sometimes there can be other things that get you it, but why would you not focus on it knowing that it is important, right? And then, you said one more thing that I was going to eat up, but now I'm like, I lost it. It'll come back to me.
Well, let me also address that about, look, there are some people who are avoiding social media on purpose. And it's sort of like almost like a platform. It's a core purpose in their life that they're avoiding social media for whatever reason, right? Whether it's political, spiritual, or mental reasons. I think that that's fine. And you've got other credentials, right? You've got your degrees, you've got your work, your actual real life experience as an expert in your industry. So let's take our landscaper again, right? You may not have a huge social media following, but you're still going to be valuable to that TV producer who's looking for an interesting segment during summertime. So you got to think about it in terms of, well, is my credential even necessary for what the press is covering? And maybe not. And that's also with the social media, for the most press, yes, it matters, but there's other press that are going to be like, it's fine. We're just going to have an interesting segment.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. This is what I was going to say. So you had said, like, in the beginning, take what you can get, basically. And I think sometimes our ego gets in the way, like, no, I don't want that. I want to do this. I actually heard somebody say, oh, I'm not going to do local press. I'm going to go to nationwide. And somebody I was in the room with was like, no. They are never going to put you on Good Morning America if they don't have like you on other local stations to at least see what you're going to do. So I think you've got to really put your ego aside. I think you start building it up, build those reps. I mean, do you really want something big the first time and you haven't learned like the experience, right? You haven't really mastered that yet. So I really like that you said, just like in the beginning, take anything to practice that and have those reps in.
Well, not to mention, look, we've placed on all those shows, Good Morning America, The Today Show, Fox News, CNBC, MSNBC. You know what the first thing that those producers ask for is your local TV segment.
Yeah.
So they want to make sure that you look and sound good. They want to make sure that, because they've got to impress their bosses with you. Yeah. So they've got to take, when they're in those meetings to say, oh, we're going to bring this expert in. Well, let's see him. Let's see the tape on them.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. I'm so glad you brought that up, because it really is something I hear sometimes people are so credible. And then we think, well, I don't need to do that. Right. But there's a reason why you may want to.
That's right. And look, in media, there's an old saying too, media begets media. And so, back in the day, I'd put a client on Larry King Live, and then the producers would call the next day very much, right? Like, oh, we want him too. That so much doesn't happen anymore, but you still leverage the past portfolio for the current person. So they want to make sure that person is, I always call them prime time ready, right? So that they have the chops, that they've been around the block a little bit with interviews, so that they are going to look good and sound good on national or international venues.
Okay. So good. Okay. One last piece of advice, something we didn't cover, something you want to repeat that you really want people to grasp. What do you want to share, Michelle?
I think that I want to say that the stories that we consume, so the stories that you consume you. I want to say that again. The stories that you consume you. So this means that if you're listening to stories that are negative, that drain you, that aren't uplifting to your business or your life, stop listening to them. That could be as simple as your neighbor's gossip, or it could be something like the national news that's wearing you down. Think about the stories that you do want to have to grow your business, and make sure that the stories that you're speaking and listening to are congruent with that growth.
Amazing. Okay. Where can people find that amazing 21-day workbook you mentioned?
Okay. Well, of course you can purchase it, on Amazon and other places like that. But Stacy, I'm going to actually send you a link so that
great.
you can include it, and then, include it in the description and give it away to any of the listeners.
Okay,
and then
perfect.
If for some reason you're listening to this interview and you're not sure where that was, then you can just email me. Just use storytellertothemedia@gmail.com. That's the easiest one to remember. And it's all spelled out, no spaces, the word TO.
Amazing. Michelle, thank you so much for being here. This was so good. And I just know that PR is something that is always going to be on, I think, a lot of business owners' mind. I think you gave them a lot of great strategies to get started.
My pleasure. I hope it really helps somebody.